So, is the real reason Prince Harry isn't in the country to stop Prince Andrew becoming the head of state and installing the new head of MI5? That sounds really clickbaity, doesn't it? But while the answer is almost certainly not, it does raise some very interesting questions. And there is actually some truth on that, so I'm going to deliver. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about something called the Regency Act. So let me explain. As we know, the King, unfortunately, is poorly at the moment. He's being diagnosed with the big C, which I really feel sorry for the guy, because, I mean, I have a visceral hatred of the sea anyway, because I lost a lot of friends. And also, he seems to be quite a nice guy. I once got to see his private collection of Islamic art, which is really spectacular. But I suppose, you know, if you're friends with the Saudi and the Jordanian royal families, you're going to get access to a lot of stuff like that. But he is poorly. So what happens if he gets to the stage where he can't fulfil his constitutional duties? Because although we say the monarch is just a figurative head of state, the monarch does have a lot of constitutional powers. You know, they're the ones who install the government. They appoint ministers. They do the state opening of Parliament. And there's two ways they can deal with this. First of all, the monarch can delegate to some people called the councillors of state. I actually have some notes here. When I say notes, I just mean I've plagiarised an article by somebody who's far cleverer. But the councillors of state are Queen Camilla and the next four people in the line of succession over the age of 21. So that's William, Harry, Andrew and Princess Beatrice. Also, Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, and Prince Edward were also empowered to act as councillors of state by the Councillors of State Act 2022. So they can delegate. Now we've got to differentiate between the monarch's constitutional duties and just things that they do that are traditional. But they can sort of, you know, pass on this and say, can I have the Councillors of State to delegate for this one? And that actually happened when the Queen was getting on a little bit. And you may remember that the Prince of Wales, as he then was, Prince Charles, actually stood in at the state opening of Parliament. But did you notice Prince William was stood behind him? Because the idea is you should have at least a minimum of two councillors of state to fulfil any constitutional duty. But what happens if the monarch becomes just incapacitated, just generally, and who decides that? You know, in America, they have this 25th Amendment, where if a majority of the cabinet sign off and say the president's no longer fit to do their duties, it moves down to the next person. We have a very similar thing. That's the Regency Act 1937, actually put all that in a statutory basis, because, you know, previously it had all been a bit common law-y. So first of all, who can make the decision that the monarch is no longer fit to be the monarch? The people who can make a declaration of incapacity are the sovereign spouse, the Lord Chancellor, the Lord Chief Justice, the Master of the Rolls, and the Speaker of the House of Commons. And the declaration needs to be signed by at least three of them. And it has to be done on evidence. They actually have to put forward medical evidence. But once they've done that, they announce it to the Privy Council and also to the heads of state of the 14 other Commonwealth countries. The governors of the 14 Commonwealth states where the British monarch is also the head of state. And so what happens then? Well, they appoint a regent, and the regent is, generally speaking, the next in line to the throne. And they swear an oath. And I've got those oaths. They swear several oaths, in fact, and I know you all like oaths. I swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to King Charles III, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God. And then they do another one. I swear that I will truly and faithfully execute the office of regent, and that I will govern according to law, and will in all things, to the utmost of my power and ability, consult and maintain the safety, honour and dignity of King Charles III and the welfare of his people. So help me God. And then there's a sort of much longer one that seems to be mainly about Scotland, but I'll read it anyway just to pad this out a bit. I swear that I will inviolably, that's a great word, maintain and preserve in England and in Scotland the established in Scotland by the laws made in Scotland and the prosecution of the claim of settlement of the true Protestant religion as established by law in England and as right, and particularly by an act entitled, and it actually says entitled and it's spelled with an I, the old-fashioned way, an act for securing the Protestant religion and Presbyterian church government, unquote, and by the acts passed in Parliament of both kingdoms for union of the two kingdoms together with the government, worship, discipline, rights and privileges of the Church of Scotland. So help me God. I hope you understood that, because I certainly didn't. I've read it about 5 times. Can a regency be ended? Yes, it can. But it has to be the same 3 or more people who signed the original Declaration of Incapacity. And once again, they actually have to have medical evidence to say, no, the monarch is now fit. But you can also make a declaration of incapacity with respect to the regent. So let's say, worst case scenario, King Charles, for whatever reason, cannot fulfil his duties as being the king anymore. Who comes in then? The regent would be Prince William. But what happens if something happens to William? Who then becomes the regent? Well, here's what's interesting. Because the next person to be the regent, because his little lad, Prince George I think he's called, he's underage, so if William can't do it, then we need this regent, and that the next would be Prince Harry, but only if he is resident in the jurisdiction. It actually says that in the law, he has to be actually living in the United Kingdom. Otherwise, Prince Andrew becomes the regent. So Prince Andrew effectively becomes the temporary monarch until Prince George turns 18. So you can sort of see why they might not want that. And what about all the MI5 stuff? Well, some of the duties that the regent does, or would do in the absence of the king, you got the state opening of Parliament, appointing ministers, appointing governors, meeting other heads of state, but also one time that Prince Charles and presumably somebody else like William stood in for the Queen was in 2013. I'm not quite sure what she was doing then, but it was the Prince of Wales rather than the Queen who held an audience with the incoming and outgoing heads of MI5, and I didn't actually realise that was something they did. But yeah, they effectively say cheerio, well done to the previous one and welcome on board to the new one. Now, whether that's a constitutional power and only they can actually approve the head of MI5, it's probably an open question. But yeah, let's say the king can't do his job and something happens to William, then you've got a choice between Harry or Andrew, and it's going to be Andrew unless Harry permanently takes up a residence back in the UK. So hence all the, is that the real reason he came over here? Probably not actually, he probably just came over because his dad's poorly, we quite understand that. But then again, like I say, I just thought you might find that interesting because it's, a little delve into constitutional law. I mean, English constitutional law is always difficult because, our American friends, they just have, one sheet of paper with it all written down. Whereas if somebody once described our constitution as written on a bunch of post-it notes scattered around the place and we can't remember where they all are. So, it becomes quite complex. But there you go. I hope I have justified the clickbaity title there. As always, I hope you found that vaguely interesting, vaguely useful. I'm not quite sure I'd be vaguely useful unless you're sort of in line to the throne. And I would say vaguely accurate, but actually, like I say, I had some notes for this one. So for once, it's actually, you can actually verify what I said, not just ramble and then nice people in the comments say, you got that wrong. Right, and where are we today? Regular viewers will know, this is an old arsenic factory. Actually operated up until World War II, because arsenic is a byproduct of tin mining, and I'm currently in a valley where they did lots of tin mining. I mean, it's all pretty empty now, apart from the noisy people over the road in a workshop. But there used to be 50,000 people used to be employed digging tin. And just, you can't see this, but behind the camera is the River Carnan, which is the most contaminated river in the UK. Although what they're doing now is they've made loads of little ponds and they put all plants in that absorb all the heavy metals. And I have noticed over the last few years that fish have started coming back in. And the Carnan is also the river where the gold for the Nebra sky disc was mined. So there you go. See you next time.